Hello, welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we are thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is New York Times best-selling author, Anita Moorjani. Anita Moorjani, author of Dying to Be Me, and her latest book, What If This Is Heaven, is a woman with a remarkable story. After a 4-year battle with cancer, she journeyed into a near-death experience, and after regaining consciousness, her cancer began to heal. Anita has dedicated her life to empowering the minds and hearts of people with her story of courage and transformation. She travels the world speaking her truth with grace and humor to sold-out audiences that want to learn of her journey and experiences of embracing change, the power of healing, and the quest to live a full and unlimited life.
Anita, through these talks, we seek to normalize death, dying, and the experience of grief left in those we leave behind. We also seek to empower individuals with awareness and the gift of knowledge that we will die, hoping to inspire change in the way we live. May we ask you to share with our listeners your experience and the awareness you brought back from it.
Wow, the work you do is beautiful. So with my experience, what happened was that I had end-stage cancer. And I went into a coma, a deep coma, where the doctors said I wouldn't be coming back. They told my family that these were my final hours. So I had literally started dying and my organs were shutting down. And I basically left my body. And I was aware that my physical body was there lying on the hospital bed dying, but I was not in my body anymore. And what I felt, though, being out of my body, was I felt amazing and incredible and free and light. My body by that point, after dealing with cancer for 4 years, and these were the final stages where I had metastasized lymphoma and I had tumors the size of golf balls from the base of my skull all around my neck, under my arms and in my chest and into my abdomen. And my body had stopped absorbing nutrition at that point. I was connected to tubes and oxygen and nutrition pipe and everything. So I had been feeling a lot of discomfort and pain and fear. And so my life was awful at that point. But when I left my body, oh my gosh, I felt incredible. I felt like I was surrounded by, I guess, love. And the love was like coming from the universe or God or other beings. It was just the most incredible state of feeling. And what I would want people to know is that when our deceased loved ones die, they feel incredible. They're not suffering anymore. I was not suffering at all. And even though my family were distraught, I felt really incredible. I was immediately surrounded by my loved ones who had passed away. And it was like they were celebrating to have me there. They were helping me through that journey of crossing over. But I reached a point where I was given a choice as to whether I wanted to come back or stay on that side. Now, no part of me wanted to come back, but my dad, who was there, my dad had died 10 years prior, and he was there to greet me on the other side, which was so comforting. He wanted me to know that it wasn't my time and that I needed to go back and that I still had a purpose to fulfill. So when I made the choice to come back, my body healed very, very rapidly. But there's so many things that I can say about this. I can speak about why not everybody comes back. And I think that's an important thing to talk about.
Interesting.
Because I would want people to know that when it's somebody's time, it's their time. And so I would just want everyone to know that when we're on that side, all we feel is pure, unconditional love for everybody over here. We feel pure love. So I just wanted people to know that if your loved ones crossed over, chances are they weren't given a choice as to whether to come back or not. If somebody does choose not to come back, it's not because they don't love you enough. It's because it is the better choice. It's the more unconditionally loving choice. Because some people may feel they can do more for their loved ones from there. Because I realized while I was on that side that my dad was still there helping me. He was still guiding me. And he was guiding me in a way that he wasn't able to do while he was here.
Anita, when I read your book, I actually read it this past week over Thanksgiving. I had a chance to sit down and spend some time with it, and it was certainly very, very gripping and touching, and I identified with a number of things that you talked about. You share in the book about things that you learned through the experience about life, and we talk all the time on this show about, people will say, well, you're just talking about death. And we're like, you don't understand. We're talking about life. That's what we're talking about. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about some of the insights that you have brought back and that have really had you living very differently than you lived before this experience. If you could share some of that with us.
Sure, because I always say that, just like you, that it's not about death. Death actually taught me how to live. And my life has improved dramatically since experiencing death. So one of the things that I learned while I was on that side is that we are meant to love ourselves and live our lives fully. And I had never known that. I had always thought that it was selfish to love myself. And I always felt that I had to be more and do more to prove myself to be worthy of receiving love. I didn't realize that the amount of love we receive from other people correlates to the amount of love we have for ourselves. And the more that we love ourselves, the more that we are actually allowing the divine to express itself through us. I realized that each of us is a piece of the divine or a piece of God. And so the most important lesson I learned was that it's really important to love myself, because when you don't love yourself, you are suppressing the divine from expressing itself through you. You're preventing God from expressing itself through you if you don't love yourself. So that's why it is so important to love yourself. The second thing I learned, which is really important, is that when you don't love yourself, you feel fear throughout life. And I never correlated the two. But lack of love leads to fear. And the reason for this is, if I can give you like a very tangible way to notice this, is that if you look at the world around you, if you watch the news is fear-based. If you look at our education system, in many cases, I think it's improving, but in many cases, our education system is based on the fear of failing as opposed to a passion for learning. So that's fear-based. Our medical paradigm is fear-based because it's more about looking for illness rather than promoting wellness. So this is what I mean. Everything is fear-based. Even our politicians are very fear-based. It's about, if you vote for that person, this is what's going to happen to the world. And it's so our whole political arena is fear-based. Our news and mass media is fear-based. Our governments, our education system, medical system. So what's happening is when you go out into the world as a vulnerable youngster, your whole vessel, if you will, your mind, your psyche, your emotions are being bombarded with fear all the time. I realized that I was living a very, very fear-based life, and that's not how we're meant to live. So the way to mitigate that is not to fight the fear, because again, that's fear-based, then you're fearing the fear. The way to do that is to consciously choose love. It's to consciously to fill your mind, your vessel, your emotions with love, through self-love, which you can then shower onto other people. If you don't consciously fill yourself with love, the world will fill you with fear. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned. And I realized that it was the fear that was the bigger disease for me than the cancer, because I feared everything before I died. I mean, everything. I feared disease. I feared death. I feared not being good enough. I feared failing. I feared everything. And it was the fear that killed me.
So how do you translate that into your day-to-day life with your family and friends?
The first thing I do every morning before anything okay, so first of all, I don't watch the news much. I'm very, very selective as to what I watch, because people in the world are beautiful. They're not hateful. They're not terrorists. When you go out into the world, people are beautiful. And so I want to fill my world with what's really out there. But one of the first things I do is that I have a gratitude journal, and every day I look for things to be grateful for. And I continue to do that because, again, if I don't fill myself up with gratitude, and the world is going to fill me up with stuff to be angry about. So, and that's what I teach people to do, because we take ourselves wherever we go. And what I often tell people is that whenever we say that we have a sick planet, what we really mean is we have a planet of sick individuals. So each individual has a responsibility to heal themselves. And if each individual healed themselves, we would have a healed planet. But so it's not about going out there and fighting with the world and being angry with the world, because you're just taking that anger with you wherever you go. So it really is about healing yourself and taking that healed self out with you. And when you are a healed self that is filled with love and kindness and joy, then that energy just spreads wherever you go. You don't even have to say anything. You just have to take yourself with you where you go, and it spreads.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
I wanted to just read to you one thing, and I know it's at the very beginning, actually, in your dedication of your book, that to me captures even what you were just saying, is I believe that the greatest truths of the universe don't lie outside in the study of the stars and planets. They lie deep within us in the magnificence of our heart, mind, and soul. Until we understand what is within, we can't understand what is without. And I thought, to me, it captured the rest of the book as you told your story about childhood and the things that brought that fear into your life and stayed with you really up until that point in your life.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I wrote that. It really, and for me, what that means is living your life from the inside out. And it's exactly what I said earlier about make sure that you consciously choose what you want to fill yourself up with. Otherwise, the world will choose it for you. And it's the same with when you define yourself, when you love, this is why I say we need to define ourselves and love ourselves, because if we don't do it, the world will define us in the way they choose to. This is what I mean by find your truth inside. The truth lies inside, not outside.
It's funny. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they said something that really stuck with me. And she said, "I'm addicted to peace."
I love that.
I thought to myself, wow, how pointed to have heard that prior to our conversation, which sounds to me very similar, where I'm hearing from you, you're addicted to love and you're addicted to peace and you're being yourself.
Yes. It's so important to be yourself and to be okay with who you are. So the key, here's the other key to self-love. And you said, what does it look like in day-to-day practice? What it looks like is a lack of self-judgment. So many of us are so judgmental about ourselves. I was, and that voice still comes up, but I keep it in check. And the voice I'm talking about is the one that says that you're not good enough, or, oh my gosh, you look fat in that, or you've got to lose some weight. And So there's all this judgment that we have going on in our head all the time, beating ourselves up. And that is the voice of self-hatred, self-judgment. And we have to stop that voice, because we have to look at ourselves as a beautiful soul. People think that self-love means just loving your body, but it isn't just loving your body. It's loving the whole you, the soul, the spirit that chose to come into this life through these parents, into this body, and to live this life. So when you think about that soul, think about the life that your soul has lived and what it has had to deal with up to now. Think of your childhood and whatever traumas you've been through and everything you've gone through, but yet your soul is still here. It's still with you. That's what you need to love and cherish, and stop beating it up, because it's here and it's still got a ways to go. It's still got to continue that journey, and it needs all the help it can get. The last thing it needs is for your mind to constantly be judging it and beating it up. So what I tell people is, being authentic means being aligned. When you're constantly judging yourself, it's like your soul is one way and your mind is the other way, so you're misaligned. And that's why we struggle with life, because your soul has come for a certain purpose, but you're there judging it, beating it up. And if you think of a child, if you were doing that to a child, the child would just wither away. That's why your soul suppresses itself. But when you align yourself, when you can say, oh, my beautiful soul, you've been through so much. Oh my gosh, I'm here for you. I'm not going to judge you or criticize you. And okay, this is where we're now. We've failed. We've fallen flat on our face, but it's okay. I'm with you. Let's get up. Let's do this. We can do it. When you're aligned, there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't do.
It's empowerment. You're preaching empowerment of oneself.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So, Anita, we're come to the end of our time, but we wanted to give you a chance. If there are those who are listening in to our podcast today, what would you, how would they, and they want to connect with you in some way. They want to connect with your work, with you in some way. How would they go about doing that?
So first of all, I have a website that's www.anitamoorjani.com, and everything, there's so much information on my website. I also have a YouTube channel with tons of videos. I think I've got more than 100 videos of my work and me speaking about all the things I do. I do also have a Facebook page, Instagram, and so I would love for anybody listening in to follow me on any of those, but check out my videos. And of course, I have a couple of books where I go deep into a lot of the lessons, but even the videos are pretty deep into what I've been talking about. So there's many ways to connect with me and my work.
Anita, we'll be sure to have that published when we publish the episode. And we want to thank you again so much for being our guest here on Let's Talk Death and for sharing your journey and the story behind your books.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. This was beautiful. Thank you.
We also want to say thank you to those who are joining and listening to this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all of the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support for grieving young adults, a program we call Actively Moving Forward.
Make sure you sign up on healgrief.org to receive our newsletter for links on more episodes of Let's Talk Death.
And with that, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on Let's Talk Death.